it's the way you touch me with the warmth of a sun. Maybe it's the way you smile. I come all undone. Ooh, babe, lost in love is what I feel when I'm with you. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter.
Profound.
Yeah.
No, I don't know who that was.
Sheriff.
Oh, I get the reference.
You like that? Well, this is
I
like...
shot the sheriff?
That was too obvious. Yeah. I'll maybe at some point have to use that, but maybe I should have used it because our guest is not elected yet, and if I actually interviewed a sheriff and I played that might not.
Yeah, that's probably not good. We do have to work in a Bob Marley song.
Yes,
one of these times. I'm not the biggest reggae fan, but I like him a lot.
I do love the Bob Marley. I'll tell you what. But yeah, this song serves two purposes. Our guest today will be sheriff candidate for Wright County, Stacey Braun, who is going to be giving us the lowdown on his campaign running into the upcoming primary
August 14th.
So this is just to get your juices flowing, to get you out ready to vote, because you can't stay home on primary day either.
Nope, definitely not.
No. The other reason I chose this song, not only because it was by the band Sheriff, but because these lyrics, I think, really hit a chord. Like, this is almost like an exact transcript out of the city council meeting that we just listened to in Golden Valley. And if you could pick out Joni Clausen and Shep Harris, Mayor Shep Harris, and this is pretty much the conversation we just heard. Isn't it?
Shep Harris is one smug, arrogant guy. I mean, he's the kind of guy who probably got, slapped as a kid and probably deserved it. Not endorsing that. I'm just saying I'd have a hard time sitting there composed listening to him. It's kind of a Renee relaunch.
It kind of is, where, you think you're offended? No, I'm offended.
Yeah, it's an out victim.
Yeah. You think you're being disrespected? No, I think really I'm being disrespected. That's an actual quote from... Okay, what are we talking about? Okay, so Golden Valley, back in... June and July here have had some meetings where they have been talking about the possibility of doing like some firearm safety classes or something.
I don't know what they want. I think what they want is to do what Eden Prairie is doing. I think the people on the council, like what's her name?
Jillian Rosenquist.
Yeah, who's just a total flake. And Mayor Harris and Larry Funest, who was very active in the DFL before, well, he still is, but I mean, he was openly active before being on. Actually, there's 5 DFLers on this council.
That's true.
Because Joni Claus and Steve Schmidgall certainly are not conservative. I think that they're using that as a front to pass some sort of gun do what we did the podcast on at Eden Prairie. I think Jillian Rosenquist is without question an anti-Second Amendment person.
Right, and I mean, she was talking about
Twitter.
She was talking about how it's imperative that cities do something. What, I don't know, but that they do something. They were referencing the cities of Excelsior. How are you going to feel about that out there on the Lake Minnetonka, Excelsior? And one of our favorite whipping boys or girls, St. Louis Park.
Right. If something's out there dumb and stupid, St. Louis Park will pick it up.
Yeah, that they're working on putting together some programs, I guess, maybe not classes, but programs on gun safety.
Is gun safety really the problem, though?
No, it's really not. It's mental mental illness. It's,
right. But Jay, I think mental illness is a slippery slope.
It is too. Yeah.
We don't. If somebody's mentally ill, and again, whatever the definition, somebody's depressed, do they get their Second Amendment rights taken away? I mean, you wouldn't. I mean, if somebody's mentally ill, we don't take away their right to vote or their First Amendment rights or their Eighth Amendment rights.
I wouldn't put that past the government.
Hey, we don't even take away their driver's license. I mean, far more people die in car accidents than do in school shootings.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think mental illness is questionable whether that's
right. But I mean, just, all the gun safety classes in the world, all the programs.
Right. The criminals aren't going to gun safety class.
No.
That's why I think this is just a front to do something to restrict the Second Amendment even further. It's already restricted. It's pretty
shall
tight.
Not be infringed.
Right. I don't know what part of that is interpreted as I've got to register my gun with the state. I've got to tell the government when I've lost it. I got to wait 7 days to get it. I don't know what part of that falls under shall not be infringed.
Right.
So keep an eye on Golden Valley. There's some council members, Joni Clausen, who needs an oxygen tank, and Steve Schmidgo, who are not happy of the way this has come out here, and really don't think it's, and I think they're right, I mean, they don't think it's the city's prerogative to go do this.
Right.
So,
and I don't blame them. They had mentioned that Excelsior is planning something fabulous in August, a parade. I think they mentioned, wasn't it? So they're going to have a anti-gun parade or a gun safety parade? A gun safety parade, maybe. Everybody can get in line and wave their guns around. Oh wait, that wouldn't be gun safety, would it? Strike that. But I'm surprised that Excelsior is on board with this, but I'm not surprised that St. Louis Park is on board with this. And whatever St. Louis Park does, Golden Valley's got to do anyways. It starts in Edina and comes to St. Louis Park, or vice versa, and then Golden Valley picks up on it.
Yeah, monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Golden Valley, it's something to watch, though, folks.
Absolutely.
Keep this updated here on the Local Lowdown. I am befuddled at the amount of people endorsing people for higher office. I mean, on the one hand, city officials whine and complain about people up top of them, yet they stick their nose in it all the time. I mean, I'm sitting here on Keith Ellison's website right now, Jay.
Yeah.
And he's got this huge list. Actually, it's not that many people when you think about it.
Too. But there's some interesting people on this
list. Interesting. It's mostly Metro. It's mostly Minneapolis. Yeah. It's mostly CD5. He doesn't seem to have a whole lot of people outside that. When did Keith Ellison become some rising star in the Democratic Party? I mean, I know the party's continued to go more radical. I mean, it's
this is radical, yeah.
I mean, that's him and Bernie Sanders. I mean, you can't get. I mean, Bernie Sanders is just an out and out. I would call him to the left of socialism. And I would say Ellison is probably to the left of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've said this before. The left wing, 15 years ago, Bernie Sanders was once kicked out of the Democratic Party basically for being too loony.
Yeah.
And Keith Ellison was considered a fringe guy when he got elected. Now he's. It's like the far left is holding the party hostage.
He was considered to be head of the party.
Well, he's the deputy.
Yeah.
I mean. And if you look at his legislative endorsements, no surprise, it's pretty much Minneapolis and St. Paul. It really isn't much outside of that.
There's some. I mean, you find these are all local elected officials.
Okay, now you're going to the local.
Oh,
one.
you want?
You
want to start up higher? Okay.
No, we don't have to. I'm just saying. Alice Hausman, Jim Devine, Sandy Pappas, Melissa Franzen. I mean, I'm not shocked at any of those names.
No.
Mike Freiberg. I guess I thought Freiberg had a little more sense than that, but I'm not. Pretty much all of that is Minneapolis, St. Paul, and a few suburbs.
Right.
The local elected officials, I am...
Ryan Winkler.
Well, Ryan Winkler, yeah, Golden Valley.
Yeah.
Probably in a safe district, doesn't have to worry.
Yeah.
The local officials, I'm
Yeah.
Not shocked at a lot of them. I am shocked at some. What is with the mayor of Newport?
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, I'm not surprised to see Shep Harris on there. Not surprised to see, the mayor of Minneapolis, the mayor of St. Paul.
Yeah. Brooklyn Center City Council member Marquita Butler.
Edina mayor? I'm Cottage Grove mayor?
St. Louis Park City Council member Ann Mavity.
Whoever that is.
Yeah. Richfield City Council member Maria Reagan Gonzalez.
Yeah, they're CD5.
Yeah. Another Richfield, Edwina Garcia.
Huh?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm surprised at the union support he's garnering. I mean, I don't know why I'm so shocked at that, but you'd think that, I'm just kind of blanking on how a private sector union is helped by a guy like Keith Ellison.
Yeah, I mean,
if I'm in the trades and stuff, I may support my union, but I may not be a radical like income redistributor. And
yeah.
I don't know, it's a little weird. I'm not surprised. Move on. I'm not surprised. NARAL.
Right.
But
that's all the
Walter Mondale
regulars.
I mean, you talk about a Democrat from 2 eras ago.
I know. I mean, he's still mad about the Reagan loss, I guess.
I don't know, but I mean, Walter Mondale would be a mainstream liberal in the 70s and 80s.
Right. I mean, he would have been no different than a Kennedy or
maybe to the left of Kennedy, of Jack Kennedy.
Right.
Maybe more of like a Lyndon Johnson Democrat.
Yeah.
But that's Keith Ellison's way to the left of that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, forget how much I don't like liberalism, but I mean, I don't know. Walter Mondale couldn't find a better candidate. And what happened to the Democrats supporting their endorsed guy?
Yeah.
That guy's got nothing.
He's got nothing happening. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but keep in mind, though, I mean, how long has Ellison been serving in Congress?
Maybe 10 years or so.
He's got plenty of money, I'm sure, to be able to put this kind of stuff out, where this other guy is reliant on whatever he raises and party contributions and,
the party's not even really backing him.
Not even that much, which is strange. And I don't know, are you done with Ellison?
Yeah, who wants to talk about him any more than we have to?
And not quite as far left, but left enough. I mean, you have Margaret Anderson Kelliher, which she was, the speaker?
Yeah, under Palente's second. Remember, she was the endorsed candidate, and Dayton beat her in the primary against him and Matt Intenza back in whatever year, 2010.
You know what I think is funny? Winkler's name shows up on this list as well.
Hey, Shep Harris, I see. Linda Higgins.
Yeah.
You see
Hopkins mayor again, for the second time. Molly Cummings.
Kathy Hempkin.
Hovland again.
Kathy Hempkin stayed awake long enough to endorse somebody.
Maplewood mayor Nora Slawick.
And, of course, she's not endorsed either. I mean, Ann Rest is supporting her. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this list, I don't know. Look,
Governor Arnie Carlson, former Governor Arnie Carlson.
Are you really surprised at Arnie Carlson? Really. I mean, yeah. That's about all I got to say to that. Here we have all of these people that are supposedly nonpartisans, right? Supposedly, they're running these races where they're not running as a Democrat, they're not running as a Republican, because local politics isn't supposed to be that way. But yet, they'll come out and put their name on the dotted line for Democrats.
Well, and I don't get, what's the incentive to go do that? Why don't you tell Margaret Anderson Kelliher to, do her own thing? What do they owe her?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at CD5, you've got a whole bunch of people in that race. You have like 6 DFLers in that race, including the last Republican who ran, Frank Drake. I don't know where that's going.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's already a circus.
Yeah.
So why would you want to even get involved? I mean, whoever you endorse, you're going to piss somebody off. So it's like, what's the point? Well,
exactly.
Does this really sway people? I mean, is Kathy Hempkin endorsing Margaret Anderson Kelliher do anything for her? Either one of them?
No.
How many people are moved by that when they, if you're voting in the DFL primary, you're probably voting for governor. I mean, you're probably not. I mean, that's probably the main thing motivating you there.
Yeah.
Same thing on the Republican side, I would assume. I'm just, these nonpartisan races, we've been telling you that they're as partisan as any race on the face of the earth.
Oh, yeah.
They shouldn't be, but they are. So don't be shocked when you see this stuff.
Well, and that's it. I think some of this is just these people, especially when you're endorsing more than one, you're just trying to get your name out there and say, hey, I'm Democrat. Don't forget to vote for me.
Yeah, but I mean, again, if I'm somebody like Joni Clausen, why is it important? You've already won a couple times. You're already there.
Yeah.
What do you need to go out and endorse somebody for?
Because they think it does something for them. I mean, really,
it's got to be.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
But really, do you...
But wait, but I mean, what if Margaret Anderson Kelliher gets creamed in this election? I mean, don't you look kind of stupid? Or do everybody just forget? Only junkies like you and I remember this
nobody's going to remember that. But what they might remember is, hey, I remember she was supporting a DFL candidate.
Yeah.
I'm Democrat. That's what they're hoping for. But you and I both know. I mean, when we went through those races in Crystal and we had people that were not supporting any party, they creamed the people that ran to the DFL because ultimately, locally, when you're worried about the people that are representing you block by block, you don't want them having an allegiance to a party.
When is anybody going to learn that lesson? I
Never.
mean, it seems like a lesson that just can't be learned.
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, just be aware, folks, of the people who knock on your door and tell you one thing and then endorse a guy like Keith Ellison.
Yeah.
I mean, frustrating. Golden Valley, boy.
Yeah.
Getting bad there, too.
Wow. Yeah. They're all endorsing somebody. And
I'm surprised Jillian Rosenquist isn't. Maybe nobody wants her endorsement.
I don't know.
I sure as heck wouldn't.
Well...
Maybe she
I think that Ellison probably would welcome it.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. But maybe she just doesn't have any pullable, unless it's the people who are already voting for Ellison in the first place.
Maybe she's endorsing somebody else. I mean, we only read two of the candidates.
And for two different offices.
Yeah. Yeah.
We think CD5, but of course Ellison's vacating that. So
right. So I don't know.
All right.
It's both.
And
we probably should have been clear of that ahead of time. That one is running for governor, or not governor. One is running for
Ellison's
AG,
running for Attorney General,
and then the other is CD5.
Kelliher's running for the seat he's vacating. Yeah.
So
all right, bring on the guest. Bring on the guest. We've given them enough pub.
Yeah, that too much Golden Valley in one day. What do you say?
That's bad.
That was the local lowdown, and now we're all feeling down. So we're going to move on, and we're going to bring on our guest, Stacey Braun, after this. Just one moment. Hey, this is Jason Bradley from the Community Solutions Podcast. I just want to take a moment and talk to you because we are neck deep in election season and people are getting their campaigns into full swing. And we wouldn't have it any other way than having you out there in the community meeting your neighbors and growing Team 20K. You know what, though? Some of you out there I know could use a little extra bump, whether that's some strategy, whether that's learning how to read a comprehensive annual financial report, whether that is understanding your city's comprehensive plan. We're here for you. So get a hold of us, and we would love to sit down for a consulting session with you. Nobody else in Minnesota does this at the local level. All you got to do is reach out to us at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That is commsolutionsmn@gmail.com, and we will sure make your campaign competitive. All right, enough of my yapping, and back to the show. And we're back. Thank you so much for being with us today. We have a special guest for you. It is Stacey Braun. He is running for the Wright County Sheriff position. That is an open seat this year, so that means there's no incumbent. And we want to welcome you here on the show, Stacey.
Thanks for having me, Jason Andrew. Greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. I know we previewed Stacey a little bit when we went to the MNGOP convention. He was one of the interviews on that podcast. I can't remember the number. I'll look it up. Maybe areas we're going if you want to go back and hear that. But you'll probably hear all of that and more on this episode. So it'll be good. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's start there.
Alrighty. Well, again, my name is Stacy Braun. I am running for the Wright County Sheriff's seat, which, like Jason said, is an open seat this year. If you have any information or have any questions about me, certainly go to my website. That's stacybraun.com. Check things out there. You can also reach me from there via email. And feel free to reach out to me with any questions. A little bit about me. I have lived in Wright County since 1977. So just about 41 years, basically my entire life. Grew up in Otsego. Then I moved to Albertville. I currently live in Monticello. So I have a vested interest in Wright County. I've worked for the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office since 1993. During my tenure there, I've been assigned 7 different divisions or units with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. Those divisions and units include the Adult Detention Division, the Training Division, the Narcotics Unit, the Patrol Division, the Canine Unit, the Service Division, and Employee Development. I've had a very well-rounded and very charmed career with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office.
Wow, that's fantastic. People don't really understand, I think, what sheriffs do. They think, okay, I see the patrol SUVs out on the street, and I know they do some investigation work, and they arrest bad guys. They're probably part of the yes. Andrew.
On that note, the first sheriff I ever heard of in my life.
Good Longmire?
No, Roscoe P. Coltrane.
Oh yes. Most sheriffs are not like that.
Yeah, no. I do think you're right, though, on that point that a sheriff is one of those under the radar positions that we talk about a lot on the program. And it's a big, important job. Why don't you tell folks listening, Stacy, what does the sheriff's office do? What services they provide out in Wright County? A lot of the cities in Wright County don't have a local police department, so it maybe makes it different from, say, Hennepin County. I mean, what does the sheriff's office do, generally speaking?
Well, some of the things that the Wright County Sheriff's Office, or any sheriff's office for that matter in the state of Minnesota, are mandated by state statute to do a few things. That's to run a county jail, enforce our waterways, and also effect arrest warrants. So with that being said, obviously Wright County does have the largest patrol division of any sheriff's office in the state, even though the Wright County Sheriff's Office is the 3rd largest sheriff's office in the state. They have the largest patrol division of any sheriff's office in the state. And part of that is, like you said, Andrew, there are only 3 cities in all of Wright County that have their own police department, 2 of which are full-time, 1 is part-time. The city of Buffalo is full-time, the city of Annandale is full-time, and the city of Howard Lake has a part-time police department. So aside from that, the sheriff's office is responsible for every other city and township and unincorporated area within Wright County as far as answering calls for service and law enforcement. So that is, in part, the big reason why the Wright County Sheriff's Office Patrol Division is so big. They have so much area to cover that is not covered by a local police department.
Wow.
Cool. Let me delve into you running then. You mentioned being in Wright County for 41 years, being vested in the community, all your experience working for. Let me see my Minnesota math. 25 years in Hennepin County now. What's the motivating you to run? What do you see as the major issues or things that you'd like to do differently in Wright County? What are the problems that are motivating you to run for this office?
Well, first and foremost, I think there's a huge gap in training and equipment in Wright County. Now, I come from a very progressive law enforcement or sheriff's office, very progressive as far as training, very progressive as far as equipment. We're very innovative in Hennepin County, and I see that Wright County, being the 3rd largest sheriff's office in the state, is lacking some of those things. A big part of that, in my opinion, is the Wright County Sheriff's Office does not have, each of their deputies do not carry a taser. I find a huge problem with that. In dealing with people who are living with mental illness, if you don't have all the tools to be able to do your job, that makes your job more difficult, quite frankly.
Right.
So when you're dealing with somebody who is, in crisis, or suffering from, some type of episode related to them living with mental illness, the Wright County Sheriff's Office essentially only has their fists, their baton, their aerosol restraint, or the pepper spray. They use Freeze Plus P out there, but most people don't know what that is, so we'll go with pepper spray. And their handgun. A taser would be another nice, less lethal tool for those deputies to be able to use in those situations. Now, the deputies out there do not carry them on a day-to-day basis. The sergeants do have access to them, but again, if you have one sergeant out there and you're covering an area that literally could be well over 200 square miles, and your sergeant is not in that area, they're going to have to come to your call, and hopefully the issue is still at a point where you haven't had to resort to, physical defensive tactics or a firearm, to be able to incorporate that taser. So I just think, having a taser, would be another nice tool for each of the deputies to have. Wright County doesn't have that. Another piece of equipment that they don't have, the Wright County Sheriff's Office, the deputies do not carry patrol rifles in their squad on a day-to-day basis. Again, the sergeants have access to them, and the SWAT members have access to them. But the deputies do not carry a patrol rifle with them on a day-to-day basis. That's going to be virtually impossible to try and counteract. We'll use an active shooter situation. If you're into a school, or a lot of people are familiar with the Albertville Outlet Mall, those would be great places for an active shooter to be. Well, how can you confront an active shooter, in any one of those venues if you don't have a long gun? Your handgun is going to be virtually ineffective. A shotgun is going to be virtually ineffective for any distance. And if you're using a shotgun, you're going to have a wider spread, of ammunition flying out there than you would with a long gun.
Absolutely.
So those are two, and I could go on about training and equipment for the entire 2 hours that we're going to have here tonight. But we'll stop it right there. Like I say, there's a gap certainly in equipment, but also certainly in training. And if you guys will allow me, I'll touch on the training part.
Yeah, go ahead.
My background is in mental health. I have an advanced degree in forensic psychology. I had CIT training, crisis intervention training, back in 2000 with the Minneapolis Police Department. I was one of the first, if not the first, to go through crisis intervention training. And again, that teaches our deputies and my fellow coworkers, how to deal with people who are in crisis when they're living with mental illness. And I don't know if it's more prevalent today, more diagnosed. I don't know what's going on, but I know there are plenty of people in our community that are suffering and living with mental illness. And I don't care if that's our service members who came home from overseas for fighting for our wonderful country and are suffering from PTSD, or some of the other mental illnesses that are out there. But there are a lot of people that are out there living with mental illness, and I think law enforcement needs to know how to deal with those people on a day-to-day basis, especially when they're in crisis. And Wright County doesn't have any of that training.
Wow.
So it's kind of like a trying to diffuse that situation.
Right.
Absolutely it is. How to diffuse it and how to deal with these people, and try and talk them down, to a more rational place for them to be, so we can all have a harmonious life.
So is there some reason Wright County is behind on those things? Is it just something that past administrations have not dealt with or not asked for, or is there some reason that you mentioned being the third largest in the state? You'd think that, well, that's a growing area of the state very much. Wright County, it's getting bigger every day. I mean, what's been the holdup then for that?
I would like to know, and I asked the current administration, what's going on, and I asked them specifically because 4 years ago when I made this run as well, I found out that the deputies there were not trained in emergency first aid and were not certified in CPR.
Wow.
Oh, wow is right.
Yeah,
because
no
you know what,
kidding.
as a taxpayer and a citizen, that bothered me to no end. and then you throw in the law enforcement factor. That really bothered me to no end. So I actually went and talked to the sheriff, and I said, hey, Sheriff, I said, tell me about this. I said, you know what, I know that you live really close to the fire department, but if you had some type of cardiac issue at your house, would you be 100% sure or comfortable that the deputies and the first responders that show up at your house would be able to help you out in this time of need? I got no answer. So that was 4 years ago. And in that, just as a candidate, I was offered free first responder training for the entire department. As a candidate, I was offered that. And then they went so far as to say, all right, I understand that, you're going to have your deputies out, off the street for this first responder training. We know you're going to have to backfill that, and it's probably going to be an overtime spot, so we'll try and find some money for you as well, to pay for that backfill overtime to get your deputies trained. Now, I had that offer as a candidate. What do you think the current administration would have had at that time? I was dumbfounded.
Yeah, if he was going to do it, he would have done it. I mean, like we've said so many times on the show about people that are in office.
I'm at a wow that they don't have first responder training. I mean, I'm completely baffled at that.
This year, and I don't know if it was March or May of this year, of course, it's an election year, so they did have some EMR training, an 8-hour class on emergency first aid, which, it's better than nothing, but I still think it's insufficient.
I had more than that in 7th grade health class.
Exactly. Well, and like I say, to not be certified in CPR, I mean, I don't know, do either one of you two have kids in daycare?
No.
All right. Well, most daycare providers are CPR certified. Why aren't our deputies in Wright County CPR certified? And I cannot get an answer to that.
Wow. That's insane.
So now my blood pressure's up. My apologies.
Hang on, I got some pills here.
You brought up the mental health thing, and I know that that's huge right now. I know that there is a lot of pushback when it comes to firearms and things like that, and people who aren't right in the head who get a hold of those things. And also, I think that there's also a growing number of people who have issues because of the opioid crisis and things like that. Can you touch maybe a little bit on how you might handle that kind of thing? Obviously, I mean, I know you think like us as far as firearms go. I would assume that you're also pro people having a way to protect themselves. But again, when we get into the mental health end of things, I don't know. It's kind of a delicate dance. Maybe you can expound on that a little.
It is, and it can be. And to answer your question, yes, I'm a life member of the NRA, a firm and staunch supporter of our Second Amendment rights. Firmly believe in both of those. When it comes to firearms, yes, you know what? I'm all for people having firearms and be able to defend themselves. But I also think that you need to be responsible and be a responsible firearm owner. So you know what? Keep your guns locked up. You know what? If you're selling your guns, and in Minnesota here, that's kind of a quirky little deal. If I'm selling a firearm to either one of you guys, we don't have to do any reporting. Nothing at all. Don't even need a bill of sale. I don't need to know anything about you. A private sale does not have to go through an FFL, a federal firearms licensed dealer.
Right.
You know, we can make an independent transaction just between you and I. So as a responsible gun owner, you know, that's something that I think that responsible gun owner needs to look at. You know what? If I sell a gun, which very rarely happens, you know what? I'm going to ask to see your carry permit or your permit to purchase. You know, that is going to prove to me that at least you've made application and there's been a background check on you, you know, to be able to attain, you know, that permit, whether it's a permit to carry or permit to purchase.
So you're talking personal responsibility of the person who is selling the firearm to check on that stuff.
Absolutely. You know, I think that all plays into the responsible gun owner, you know, portion of being a firearms owner.
So how do you see with the mental illness end of things? Because sometimes that doesn't get caught right away. People go through things in life and they snap, or you know, or with the opioid crisis such as it is, and maybe not even relating to firearms. That's just one aspect of how I think just the weight of things that you need to worry about, a sheriff and your deputies need to worry about when they go on a call or something like that. How do you plan to address that stuff?
Well, like I say, I spent numerous years in our narcotics unit with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. I worked undercover for quite some time. I was duly sworn with the ATF and the DEA, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the Drug Enforcement Administration. I didn't spend all my time here in Minnesota. I traveled outside of Minnesota with the Drug Enforcement Administration and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Drug use and drug abuse, I will classify as a mental illness. Chemical abuse, we'll leave it at chemical abuse. How's that? Because there are other chemicals that are abused as well. But as far as the drug use, yes, I do believe that there's an opioid crisis. I do believe that there's a methamphetamine crisis in Wright County. I can tell you that there was a significant amount of methamphetamine that was taken off the streets in Wright County by the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office just last Wednesday, 6 days ago. And when I say significant, I'm talking nearly a pound. So there is a drug problem in Wright County, and with my background in narcotics, that is definitely something that I would like to address with Wright County, because I can tell you, back in the 90s when I was working narcotics, there were 4 deputies working narcotics in Wright County. Now that was back in the 90s. Now, I can tell you between then and now, the population has nearly doubled in Wright County, but yet there's only 2 deputies today working narcotics in Wright County. And to touch on a little bit further than that, there were no deputies at one point this winter working narcotics in Wright County.
Wow.
They both left for other departments. So I would fall back on my narcotics training, my investigative background, to try and under no circumstance let the drug dealers, drug manufacturers, and drug users know that they are not welcome in any uncertain circumstance in Wright County.
Wow, that's good. Because I know that's a problem statewide, and it's not just in the big city; it's also out, in the rural areas as well. And so, there's got to be some sort of a plan. People can have their opinions about whether pot is good or bad, and all of that. But when we get into the hardcore stuff like heroin, and there's just not. I don't know if there's really been a good answer, to how to combat that yet, and people have to start getting some sort of a plan together. I think at the level of sheriff, at the level of it just doesn't do any good to make laws that people don't follow.
Yeah, there's it's in some ways I think it's worse than ever. It seems like everybody's on some sort of I've got my opinions on these depression meds and all these sorts of things and all these pain pills. It just seems like everybody's been diagnosed with some, we're diagnosing kids as young as 5 years old with bipolar disorder. It's gotten that out of hand, and yet at the same time, something I think is also on the demand end. But when you talk about law enforcement, it's law enforcement's job to enforce the law, not decide what laws they're going to enforce. So it's, the burden does fall on you guys to I don't want to say clean up the county, but do what you can to keep people off this stuff.
Right, and you're right, Andrew. It is our job, as law enforcement officials to do just that, is enforce the laws. And you know what? I don't pick and choose, and I never picked and choose, even when I was working narcotics investigations, what my investigation was, and oftentimes it led, elsewhere. But I can tell you, that the times and the trends change as well. Back when I first started working narcotics, you didn't see heroin. It wasn't around very much, in the early and mid 90s. It started making a big front, probably in the late 90s and the turn of the millennium. I can also tell you at that time, methamphetamine labs were huge, especially in Wright County. And I was a clandestine lab eradicator. That was something that is still very dangerous today, whether it's out on, a rural piece of property, and I've arrested people that have had meth labs in the trunk of their vehicle. It's very deadly for law enforcement. It's very deadly for the for the regular public. But you're not seeing the methamphetamine labs today like you used to see 15 or 20 years ago. A lot of that methamphetamine now is being manufactured out of the country and being shipped up here. So the dynamics change and things change, the way drugs are introduced into our communities as well.
I wouldn't know heroin or methamphetamines if it was sitting in front of me.
Right.
I honestly wouldn't. I couldn't tell you what any of this stuff looks like. I mean, I remember my high school locker room smelling interesting smells sometimes when I was in high school, but I wouldn't know a drug if it was sitting in the front seat of my truck. I mean, am I ignorant or lucky?
Both.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about ignorant. I would say lucky, and you're keeping good company.
I guess so. I guess the fear of my father and the fear of getting kicked off the baseball team or something like that, and I think that there's not wanting to fall in that trap of knowing people who've abused drugs and things like that just makes you never even want to try them, look at them, think about them. For me, myself personally, I was lucky I had a good moral compass from my mom and dad, so I guess I lucked out and never, still to this day, wouldn't know a drug if it were sitting next to me. So
it's not a bad thing, Andrew.
Yeah,
it's not
I know.
A bad
but
thing.
The idea that there's meth labs out in, out on a farm somewhere is just, it's kind of a foreign thing to me. I'm shocked at it, but I'm not that I didn't know about it, but I mean, I'm just kind of floored by how big the problem really is. I mean, that just I'm just constantly amazed at. Amazed isn't the wrong word, or isn't the right word. Just shocked, I guess, at how big the problem is. Just all over the country, all over the world. And if drugs are ever eradicated, it's got to be from the demand side. There's got to be less demand. But, I don't know how you do that.
I think education is a big thing, too. Yeah. That's, I'm a staunch believer in our DARE program. Let's get to our young kids early and, like you say, set their moral compass like your parents did. We can start doing that, in our schools if it's not being done at the home, like it was, most likely for the three of us.
Right.
Because the family dynamic has changed as well. Mm-hmm. So, why can't we get to these kids, at a young age, through the DARE program, for instance, or your school resource officers, and, let's educate these kids and, show them, what the potential repercussions and, if they decide to, follow that path, what it could lead to.
Well, and keeping kids busy. That's the other thing. Keeping them in sports, keeping them in after-school programs and things like that. I mean, the more time somebody has and the more times they're laying around playing, well, it was Super Mario Brothers in my day. I don't know what the kids play now. Call to Duty or something. I don't know. But the more time that's going on, the worse, I think.
There was a candidate forum a few weeks ago, and I want to touch on something quickly because it's another one of those functions that I don't think people really understand is the whole forfeitures and foreclosures part of what a sheriff's office does. And we're not going to talk about what where your opponents are on things, but they weren't able to answer a question regarding that. And for our broad listening audience who maybe didn't hear that forum, can you please just kind of reiterate what's going on in Wright County, how you would approach the issue?
There was actually a state law that was introduced earlier this year that I took some time and ran down to the Capitol on regarding forfeiture. Now, you brought up both forfeiture and foreclosure. That is also another aspect, not only of law enforcement, but typically of a sheriff's office as well, especially the foreclosure part of it. Both of those things they're civil parts of our law. Foreclosures actually it's a civil process. It's not a criminal process. But so is the forfeiture part of say a DWI or drug enforcement of any type. And we'll touch on, because I think your question more so is related to the forfeiture part of forfeiture and foreclosure. But as far as forfeiture is concerned, if you are arrested for multiple DWIs or have enhanced DWIs, your motor vehicle can be seized and eventually forfeited. And when I say forfeited, basically the law enforcement entity, takes custody and possession of your vehicle, and then that's where sometimes you'll see the police auctions. A lot of those vehicles that are in the police auctions are not only retired, service vehicles, but they're also forfeited vehicles. As far as the drug trade is concerned, if we can show any proceeds from drug sales, whether it's a boat, a car, an RV, physical property, money is a big one. If we can show and prove that those are proceeds from drug sales, all of those things are subject to civil forfeiture from the law enforcement. Now, a part of the bill that was introduced earlier this year was basically to make all of the proceeds from those forfeitures go into a general fund in the state, where now the forfeiture, the way the law reads now, the forfeitures that we actually seize, during, DWI or drug arrests, come back to the arresting agency. So we'll use Wright County as an example. So that money comes back to the Wright County General Fund, the Wright County Attorney's Office, and the majority of it goes to the Wright County Sheriff's Office. Now, typically that money is earmarked and can only be used for training and equipment, the forfeiture money. But like I say, now the state wants to try and introduce a bill where, all those forfeited assets go into a big general fund. Now, I have a big problem with that. Why should, a department that is not doing any drug or DWI enforcement be able to have access to these forfeited funds when they're not doing the work or generating, the business to get these forfeited funds? And I also believe that part of the bill said that there should be an extended period of time. The way things work now is you have 10 days to file any type of resistance, or not resistance, I guess, but if you want to contest that forfeiture, you have to do that within 10 days. I personally have a problem with that. You know what? You only have 10 days to, contest your civil forfeiture. You know what? You haven't been found guilty or convicted of a crime yet. I've got a problem with that. You know what? Why are we taking your property, on a suspected DWI charge or a suspected drug charge when you haven't been convicted of it yet? I think the whole role thing it's just kind of messed up the way it is now. You know what? Let's address the forfeited asset part of it, after you're either found innocent or found guilty, and then we'll make a decision from there. The only problem with that is the storage of that property. Right. Which is another issue in and of itself.
So they want to take the money and, in other words, they're saying, let's take the money and all become socialists. Redistribute it everywhere.
Put it in a
to everybody.
It'll be the same thing. 10 counties will do all the work. 87 counties will get all the money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And spread it evenly. And I've got a problem with that.
And we all know evenly is code words for the big counties. Hennepin and Ramsey will get it all. Just like LGA. Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Duluth will get all the money.
Right.
They'll make some sort of formula and that only tax auditors understand. We all know that's how most of the money in Minnesota is spent in St. Paul. Huh. Interesting. So a forfeiture. So let me just ask a general question on this. You mentioned proceeds from say a drug sale or something. So when you say a forfeiture, if you can prove that somebody bought a boat with drug money, is that what you mean by that? That the boat can be seized then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I can tell you, back in my days of working undercover, I did have an undercover boat on one of the larger lakes in the metro area here. Mm-hmm. That was a seized vehicle, or was a seized boat. I also drove a very nice convertible car for a while. That was a seized vehicle from drug proceeds.
They always drive better cars than we do.
Well, it's amazing.
Got the theme from Miami Vice going through my head right now.
Well, and if you would have saw it, it was a beautiful. I don't even know what color they even called it, but it was a beautiful electric blue Corvette with a white convertible top.
Wow!
It was a beautiful car.
Crime does not pay, kids. All your nice stuff will be taken away. It's just the way it works.
Certainly could be.
But talking about this a little bit more, and especially talking with some of the funds that you're trying to keep local versus putting in a general fund, and fiscal responsibility is a big part of your platform as well. And people don't, I think, associate that a lot with a sheriff's department. It's like, well, okay, you got to hire deputies and you need vehicles and stuff like that. But I mean, there are many options, and plus, I know because it's public servanthood that even with the people that are full-time paid people and not elected, that you have things like para reimbursement and all these benefits and things that need to be paid. Can you talk a little bit about the whole administrative end of that, and then fiscal responsibility and how you plan to employ that?
And I'll be honest with you, I work for the largest sheriff's office in the state right now. I don't exactly know what our sheriff's budget is in Hennepin County, but I can tell you that the sheriff's office budget in Wright County is approximately $30 million.
Wow.
That's a big number. And you're right. There are a lot of things that most people don't know. Yes, you know what? Our biggest outsource of money is obviously going to be your employees, wages. Of course, that's going to be huge because, you've got a lot of employees to pay for, and having those employees is not cheap. But in addition to that, you have a county jail to run, and the jail out in Wright County is very new. It's very modern. It's very nice, so you have to pay to staff that, keep it heated and cooled, and keep it lit. Yes, you're right. You know what? You also have equipment to worry about, and a squad car just isn't a squad car. I mean, there's a lot of equipment that goes into that squad car when you're talking radios, computers, radar units, and everything else that goes along with, just operating, a patrol deputy's office on wheels. Yes, you also have to worry about, the para contributions, and I think the employer right now is at 20... I know I'm going to get this number wrong, but it's over 20% of the wages of the employee gets put into the Public Employee Retirement Association. Wow. But then you also have health care to worry about on top of that as well. Health care isn't cheap when you're talking hundreds of employees.
That it's very expensive.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess my question comes in of like what authority does the sheriff have over that? Is everything line itemed to you, or is it because I'm one, and this is just my opinion, and in some cities where Jason and I have helped elect people, I've always told them, look, it's not your job to micromanage this. I mean, you have a sheriff or a police chief for a reason. You don't know anything about being a police chief or being a sheriff. You give them a budget, you let them figure out what to spend it on. But I've seen it where, if you want 5 radios, you literally have to go there and lobby for a line item for 5 radios. I mean, what's your opinion on, you don't do the budget, that comes from the county commissioners, but I mean, when it comes, is it best that everything is line itemed, or should the sheriff have the authority to say, okay, look, here's where I think the money needs to go, and the priorities that I ran on, this is what I want to do with the office?
Well, there's a couple ways of looking at that. In Wright County, our county commissioners are awesome. The county board out there is awesome. And when you say, the sheriff doesn't have a whole lot to do, with the budget, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. No. We have to make a budget proposal to the county commissioners. You know what? If the county commissioners don't like it and don't appreciate it, they can reject it, send it back, and say, all right, fix this. You know what? If I'm going to go in and ask for $35 million, but the county commissioners say, nope, we only have room for $30 million, go back and figure out how you're going to get rid of that $5 million. But to answer your question, yes, a lot of the items in a sheriff's budget are line itemed, so you can't take your line item for, say, employee wages and go and buy those 5 new radios that you were asking about. Because one of the concerns that I have is in Wright County, for the last, well, I can tell you more than 4 years, there has been a moderate 7-figure number returned to the county board every year.
Huh.
And I find that very interesting for a couple reasons. You know what? If we're going to line item, everything, which I don't have a problem with, you know what? Obviously, there's some adjustments that need to be made. You know what? So if we have, and I'll just use some hard and fast numbers, say we have a $100 budget for equipment, but this year we spent $110. We have a $100 budget for wages, but we only spent $80. Why can't we, adjust in next year's budget, make our employee wages a $90 budget and move that extra $10 up to equipment where we know that we had a spending overage this year to try and balance the budget. And yes, do you need to be fiscally responsible? Absolutely. You know what? I'm a taxpayer in Wright County as well. I don't want my taxes to go up. And anybody who thinks that, I'm going to bring on an additional 200 deputies and not care about the taxpayers, sadly wrong, because I don't want my taxes going up either. I'm a government employee, for crepe's sake.
Yeah, I guess I come from, watching work sessions at cities where, it's, I want 7 handcuffs and you're trying to adjust, and I'm like, the city council had no idea what, to me, their job was to figure out the money, not tell people where to spend it. And that's just a philosophy that, I think is worth discussing. Whether I do like things line itemed at the end. I think transparency, people ought to know where their tax dollars end up. But I'm just, when you present a budget, I'm just curious, how much of it gets, I know in Crystal we dealt with, Jay, the police chief had asked for 4 things, and the city council said, okay, look, we're going to allocate money for 2 of them, but you decide what 2. We're not going to make your mind up for you. And I'm kind of curious at the sheriff's office if it's more like that, or if it's more, if you want something little, you've got to put something little down there and put it in there. In the end, I think it all needs to be in there because people need to know where their tax money's going.
And it does need to be in there. And like I say, I don't know. Obviously, I cannot tell you, what I'm going to need a year from today. Right. Because I cannot forecast or predict, what's going to fail. You know what? If there's, I don't know, we'll just use an example. If our radios, if there's, some type of defect in our radio, I can't tell you that that's going to fail in 9 months. I can't predict that. Right. So, do we have to have, maybe a little bit of wiggle room in our budget? Yeah, you know what? As sheriff, I would love for the county board to write me a $30 million check and say, here, spend it however you want. Yeah. Go have fun with it. But again, there is no fiscal responsibility there. And as a taxpayer, like you said, I want to know where my money's going. So do I have a problem with line iteming things? No, I think that's the way to go because, again, it leads to transparency. And I want to run a very transparent department. Are there little things? I'm not going to line item, 1,236 paper clips for the year. That's a little ridiculous. Yeah. But
office supplies are office supplies.
Right. Yeah. So how specific can you get? So there has to be a little bit of wiggle room. But yes, there needs to be a lot of those items, need to be, line items so it is transparent to the taxpayers who are essentially paying the bill and footing the bill, for the services and the product that they're getting.
Wow. Well, it's a huge part. And that's why I think they say that the sheriff's position is kind of a strange animal because it's part political and it is it's law enforcement, but it's also political, and so it's different from like a police chief because they're just responsible to the city manager, or in some cities maybe directly to the city council, but or the mayor maybe like in like a strong mayor city, but with a sheriff, you have to face election every 4 years, and it's another one of those things where people know so little about it. They just, they know you drive the SUVs around. They know, like we said at the beginning of the interview, but there is so much more to it, and it's really nuanced. Some sheriffs, I'm sure, are way more on the political end of things, and some are very much more on the law end of things. It's kind of hard, I would imagine, to to kind of go straight down the middle without picking a camp, so to speak.
I would agree with you, because I'll be quite honest with you. You know what? I've been a cop for 25 years. You know, I never considered myself a politician. You know, and never really wanted to have anything to do with politics, you know, until I started my race 4 years ago, and even more so during this race when I made my announcement January 3rd. I think it's virtually impossible for me, and I'll speak just for me, to strike a balance between law enforcement and politics. You know what, as far as I'm concerned, you know what, I'm a cop. I've been a cop for 25 years. You know, I just happen to be running for a position that is political, unfortunately. So now I have to learn the political side of it. You know, and I have to get out and talk to the county commissioners, which I do, and they are more political, I guess, than I would have ever expected to. So, you know, in dealing with these different people, you know, the mayors, you know, of different cities, the township boards, you know, the county boards, you know, that forces me, I guess, to become a little more involved in politics, which is something I never thought I would see myself doing.
Yeah. Which is okay, you know, and it's not cut out for everybody, you know, but, you know, there are a few people, you know, that do go down that route, and I think there are far fewer that go down that route when it's, you know, in this instance where it's a sheriff's race, you know, you'll see more people stepping into city council, school board kind of stuff, but I think this is really a strange animal, you know, but I think it's also necessary to have like your top law enforcement officer of the county be responsible to the people. So I think that it's a very good thing that we elect sheriffs.
I believe that it is too. You know, I certainly believe that. And like I say, you know, when it comes to the political and law enforcement divide, I'll be honest with you, you know, again, you know, I never saw myself getting into politics, but I did delve into politics a little bit. You know, this year I became a delegate, you know, for the city of Monticello, and represented them, you know, both in CD6 and at the state convention. You know, so I'm starting to learn a little bit more about politics, which I know I need to do, and I'm willing to do that. But like I say, when it comes down to me, you know, and my core, you know what, I'm in law enforcement and have been for 25 years, but I do know that politics play a part of that. And I don't have a problem with politics. I'm actually starting to enjoy it quite a bit, and you know, I'll thank both of you for a little bit of that as well, because it is a very interesting beast. But as far as the sheriff's concerned, yes, I do believe that, you know, it is interesting, you know, being elected, you know, because essentially, in stark contrast to, you know, a chief of police, essentially you have a 4-year contract as a sheriff, you know, being elected, you know, by the people, by your constituents. So you essentially have a 4-year contract, and you'll be asking for another 4-year contract extension, you know, after your first 4 years is up. So you still have to, you know, during your term, you know, still get out in politics, because yes, you do have to answer to the people. But I also believe that an elected sheriff, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful, unchecked elected officials in any form of government.
Right.
Local, state, or federal. Who really checks our sheriff? And that's one thing that I try and impress on the people that I talk to. You know what? Be very careful, you know, on which bubble you circle when you're casting that ballot. You know, should it be a popularity contest? You know, do you want your homecoming king, you know, or your high school football star as your next sheriff? Because essentially, I guess, when you look at it, and as a small business owner, I've been a small business owner for 13 years, but as a small business owner, you know, I look at the sheriff's office, the Wright County Sheriff's Office, as a $30 million business, okay, because that's what our budget is. You know what? We have 230 employees, right? And we have 180, well, we'll say 150,000 customers. That's the Wright County residents and business owners. You know what? Do you want to turn your investment in that $30 million company that you have a stake in, you know, to your friend, to your friend's friend, to the homecoming king, to the football star? No, you know what? Let's be smart about this and make a good, informed, and educated decision.
Well, just getting involved in politics. I'm so happy I'm retired as a delegate after 10 years of doing that. No offense. I mean, you guys got my money all those years, but I'm happily retired and sitting in the press Corps was definitely a different feel. Yeah, interesting way to think about it, though. And I think, there's 87 sheriffs in Minnesota. I wonder how many the average person could name. 87 county attorneys, and I basically can name the ones that I live in, and you and I do this all the time, and it does fall under the radar, and it's too bad that it does. They are big jobs, they are important jobs, and that's what we're here to do, is shine a light on these offices that fall under the radar. Stacy, let's we're going to wrap up here soon. I just want to give you a chance to talk about is there one or two other issues you'd like to talk about or address? Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to hit on? I'll give you a chance to do that, and then after that, once again, tell everybody where they can find you on the web or on Facebook, how to get a hold of you. And we do have the vote coming on August 14th, which is the primary out in Wright County, and, of course, the general election in November. So we'll give you a chance to, if we missed anything, and once again, reiterate how everybody can get a hold of you.
Alrighty. Well, and I appreciate that again. Thank you both, Jason and Andrew, for having me here tonight. I greatly appreciate it. You guys are awesome. I don't know why you guys aren't constantly busy, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because you're fun to talk to.
Seems like we are, though.
Well, and you might be, because I'll admit it's oftentimes difficult to get a hold of you guys. But like I say, when we do have our conversations, and if you guys heard what we were able to talk about when we're not in front of these microphones, that would be enjoyable as well. So again, thank you guys for having me out here today. But yeah, you know what? Certainly go out and check out my website. Again, it's stacybraun.com. You can certainly find me on Facebook, Stacy Braun for Wright County Sheriff. Check things out. Check my platform out. Check my ideas out. But I also encourage all the residents of Wright County to check out the other 4 candidates as well. And again, make an educated and informed decision on who you elect as our next Wright County Sheriff, because, again, it is very important. It's a contested race, and you're right, the primary election is August 14th, and this is going to be a big election, for everybody. I mean, we have a huge gubernatorial race. Secretary of State, I think, is going to be a big race as well. So, certainly get out and vote for the primary, but my big thing is flip that slip and vote for your sheriff, because it is a very important position and a very important elected position, especially in Wright County with 5 of us running this year.
Absolutely. So August 14th is primary day, and it is so important that you get out and vote. One more time, why don't you just go through all of your contact info so that people know exactly where to find you? I mean, how they can find you on social media, where you are on social media, all of that. Just lay it out there so that this podcast works in your favor and people can go right out there. And
again, Jason, I appreciate it. And unfortunately, I have not gone as far as taking all of your advice and getting on Twitter and Snapchat, and man, I don't even remember all the other ones that you guys brought up to me here a couple weeks ago. But you can find me on the web. Again, it's stacybraun.com, and look for me on Facebook. I try and keep my posts, update and accurate, and I throw out some interesting facts out there, and some enlightening information, on my Facebook page that tends to stir up some conversation and get people thinking, which again is what I want. But yeah, stacybraun.com. Find me on Facebook, Stacy Braun for Wright County Sheriff.
All right, and people can vote now. I mean,
That's
there's
true.
Absentee voting's been going on since about June 28th or something, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
45 days, I think it is, before the primary. So I'm sure a handful of people, and it's a big thing on primary day. I think a lot of people are wrapped up in the governor's race. They're wrapped up in attorney general or whatever else. But you got to check your cities out. You got to check your counties out. You got to check your soil and water out. You got to check your townships. You got to check every single thing. Don't just give a blank stare to that ballot like I know some of you do out there, who just go to the top of the ticket. We've said this before on this program. More money is spent at the local level in the state of Minnesota than is spent in St. Paul. That's an ipso facto, totally 100% true statement, not just because I said it, because we did the research. More money is spent locally, yet we have that upside-down view of politics.
Absolutely. And one more time, just if people want to donate to your campaign to help you with signs and all that, let them know.
Well, that is one thing, too, that I didn't bring up. I am self-funding my campaign. A few reasons for that. You know, this is something that I had planned on doing for a number of years, something I've been budgeting for a number of years. So I'm self-funding my campaign. I'm not even taking any money from my mother, who, you know, tries to offer money all the time. The reason I do that, I don't want to owe anybody any favors. I don't want Jason coming back in 2 years and saying, hey, you know what, I got a speeding ticket in Wright County. Do you remember that $20 I gave you to help buy a sign?
That's why I use my cruise control everywhere I go.
Smart man, and that's what it's there for. But no, I'm self-funding my campaign and doing it all myself because I believe in this. I believe in me, and I don't want to have to owe anybody anything, you know, at the end of the day.
So in other words, America, your money is no good here.
Not to
Keep
me.
walking. Straight to the polls and vote for Stacey Braun, apparently. So well, it's been really good to have you in, and once we get past the primary and we're working towards the general, we'll have to touch base with you and see how things are going, and we're excited. I assume that things will work well in your favor because you're working hard, and you know, we see your stuff out there. So good luck in the primaries.
Again, thanks you, Andrew. Thank you, Jason. Greatly appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Anytime, Stacey. Thanks. Well, Andrew, that was another fantastic interview, and I was really glad that we had Stacey on.
Yeah, I mean, it's sheriff's offices, like we mentioned, just don't get the pub, and they should. It's an important office. That county attorney going out to other counties that elect a auditor and things like that. You know, those you counties know who you are. I mean, these races are just as important, and you know, broadening what we do here and bringing all the local news and candidates to everybody is what the show's all about.
Absolutely. And we have a lot more of these types of interviews as we go through election season. Don't worry, we're not going to stop giving you the good news, or the bad news like at the beginning of the podcast, but we're going to let you know what's going on around the state. And we'll continue to bring you Local Lowdown. We're going to continue to bring you great podcasts as well that aren't necessarily election related, but we're going to sprinkle them in because we figure a little of everything is good.
Here's the thing: win, lose, or draw, these issues, some of these shows are timeless.
Yeah.
You know, you can play them in 10 years and the same issues will be same budget, CAFR, zoning.
Oh, I hope not. I would like to see the tide begin to reverse within 10 years.
Well, okay. I didn't want to go there, but yeah. I agree.
I got to live the pipe dream, you know, that someday we'll see these things start to change. But who knows?
In the meantime,
it'll be different things.
In the meantime, another show in the can.
That is true. Another show in the can, complete, finny, done. You guys heard everything here, and if you think this was a great podcast, you liked what Stacey had to say, or just you like the issues that were brought up, and you would like people to hear about it, whether you agree or not. The best thing that you can do to get the word out there is go onto our podcast, which, as we said earlier, you can find at any of these great locations like the iTunes Store, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and give them a rating. Go out there and rate them and leave a comment, and that's going to let those services know that there's interest and that people are listening, and that's going to give it more visibility. So that if you're looking to help us, that would be a great way to do it. But you're not just helping us, you're helping you, because the more people that hear this, the more people you're going to get who are going to get excited about it and stand up and begin to change your communities. And that, in the end, really is what's important. And that's why we're here doing this, Andrew.
Mm-hmm. No question.
Absolutely. So we're going to be back 1 week from today with another fantastic podcast. You better believe it. Until then, you're going to have to behave. And by behave, I mean go out there and make lots of trouble. And do what we would do. Just get out there and start telling people about this stuff, because we've done our part. And we love you, Minnesota. And now it's your turn to get to work.
let me be. If I get too caught